Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar series put on the NBJ Sports Task Force. I am the chair, Sherrod Blakely with NBC Sports Boston, and we have a talented group before us right now, headlining by my good friend, David Aldridge, the editor-in-chief of The Athletic DC. We also have Tara August, who is the special projects.
She said Tara.
I know, I've already spoken. It's Tara.
She just told you that.
Tara like Sarah. She just told
Tara
you.
like Sarah.
I know like a minute ago.
Jesus Christ.
I love you too. Tara August, Senior VP, Talent Relations and Special Projects with Turner Sports. And as you've already heard from our good friend, Mark J. Spears.
Okay. Glad you didn't call me Mork.
Mork.
As you can tell, it's been a while since we've had a chance to get together. So there will be a lot of comedic crap going back and forth, but we love each other. And we certainly love this session that we are about to start with. I'm just going to pass it over to David Aldridge, who is going to lead this session, which will look into different tips and strategies to help us cover sports when there are no games to be played. So David, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Sherrod. Appreciate it. Before we even begin, there's a message that I just received. It's from Lori Anderson. It says her name is Tara from her mother. There you go. Done and done.
Thanks, Mama.
So look, this is going to be, we want this to be your webinar, your questions, your Q&A. And there's two ways that you can send questions to us. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, right in the middle, there's two tabs. One says Q&A, one says chat. So you can hit either one of those and we will see the chat in the chat stream, or we'll see it in the Q&A stream. And we will try to get to as many of these questions as we can tonight, because we want to hear from you all about what you want to know about as we all deal with this unprecedented, and that is not a cliche to say unprecedented situation. So before we take any questions, I want to ask everybody how they're doing, first of all. How's everybody holding up?
You know, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I always, every day when people ask that question, I say, I can't complain. I really can't. I've got a great setup. I've got, you know, I'm by myself, but not in spirit. I've got a lot of friends and family checking on me. So I really can't complain. I was watching another webinar and the great Bonnie Bernstein was asking people what their worst and best day has been through all of this. And I thought that was really insightful. So maybe by the end of that, we can get to it, because I've got a little bit of a story to share, but I'm doing okay.
Absolutely. Mark?
Yeah, no, there's been certainly some ups and downs. I'll just say now everybody in my family's all right. So it's been a struggle, and I have had some friends whose loved ones have passed, but as I wake up every morning, I have a roof over my head. I have a job. Man, I got food. I've gone to go work out, and I got my private place that I found that I'm not telling anybody. But near there, it just puts everything in perspective when you see cars, and these ain't buckets. These are nice cars. People waiting for boxes of food. Yeah. And so every time I drive by this group of people, it really kind of reminds me how lucky I am to be in the position I am.
Absolutely. So I hope everyone out there that's watching is doing okay. And if you're not, we're thinking about you. Yeah. And please do not keep these things to yourself. Reach out to people, you know, friends, family, whoever it is that you feel comfortable talking to, because this is on all of us. The mental strain on all of us is profound, and it's not letting up anytime soon. So take care of your mental health as well as your physical health. So with that, I will get started, and we will start with, we got two questions before we began. Let me pull this up real quick so I can read them. And here's the first one. Hold on one second. I'm looking for it right now, and of course I can't find it. Oh, I do know what it was. We got a call saying from someone asking, or a letter or email from someone asking or saying that they do not, they're a young reporter and do not have much experience in terms of talking to people on the phone, which is what many of us now have to do, obviously, because we're not in front of our teams anymore, our players, our coaches, and people that we get information from. And she wanted to know if there are any good phone taping apps that you could use or download. And there are, actually. I use one called Tape a Call,
That's what I use.
-call, CALL.
Yeah.
And it's very good, and it tapes the conversation very well, and you can go back. It's got a transcribe function if you want that. But before we do anything else, the most important thing is you have to ask for permission to tape people on the phone.
Yeah.
You can't just start taping someone on the phone without their permission. Like these are state laws, wherever state you happen to be in, whatever state they happen to be in, right? So when you call somebody and you want to talk to them for a story, before you do anything else, you have to ask them, is it okay if I tape this call for my story so I can transcribe it? And I think, 98% of people are fine with it because they understand what you're trying to do and you want to get it right. You don't want to misquote somebody. But there are a lot of good taping apps out there that are, very inexpensive, pretty inexpensive, and very easy to use. Tara, I didn't know if you had one that you liked.
No, I mean, for television, it works a little bit differently, but I would say, especially if you're a young journalist, you're doing exactly the right thing. Ask the veterans in the industry what they're using. There's a lot of tricks to the trade and tips and tools that you can hone in on if you just ask people who are similarly situated.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got some tips.
Definitely ask for permission. No, that's the first thing. And if they say no, you can't do it because you are literally breaking the law if you just go ahead and do it. So don't do that. You don't want to be a felon early in your career. It's a bad look. David has a question. I host a sports talk show. One of my biggest issues is connecting with guests during this time. My local teams are not as responsive in returning requests. How can I improve in building relationships to deepen my roster of guests? Which is a very, very good question. I would say, well, Mark, you can answer that first. You're in the field, you're talking to people all the time.
Yeah, I've had a couple, there's a radio guy in New Orleans who's kind of hit me up too, and he's trying to get people. And this to me is a test for, I think, all journalists to, when you're trying to get interviews, like kind of reminds you how important relationships are.
Absolutely.
And that time where you could have been talking to the player in the locker room, but you decide you want to get pregame meal instead. That's where all this stuff kind of catches up to you.
Yeah.
It's always important to try to build as many relationships with the players as possible. One, to not only get that phone number, but for them to be comfortable to reach out to you. So I think there are some beat writers probably struggling now because they can't get a hold of anybody. But for like radio guys, maybe you go to the beat writers because there's a lot of media now that suddenly have free time that you could reach out to them. Maybe you reach out to different agencies. There's one agency where they're helping me connect with a player in terms of getting interviews or giving me ideas, which I think we're all open to at the time. So in a lot of ways, you just got to be creative and maybe even follow what they're doing on social media, and because maybe there is some media fatigue in terms of, wanting to write a story about coronavirus. But if you hit up the right player, maybe because nobody else is hitting them up, they'll give you an interview.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, Mark, is all of these guys are in the same position that we are, guys and girls, so they're sitting at home, they're trying to occupy themselves. Some of them are creating content on their own. You'd be shocked. Go ahead and hit them in their DMs, or
absolutely.
Make your pitch, and try to make it appeal to them, not just what's in it for you. If they're promoting a charity or they have a message, like Kevin Love is all about mental health. I'm sure if you sent him something that said, listen, I want to get this message out to my readers or my listeners in this way, that may pique his interest versus just hitting him up for something that maybe he doesn't want to talk about right now, like coronavirus. Also, see who their personal publicists. A lot of these guys now have their own individual reps or who their agents are. So if the team is not responding, just do a search, see who else they're represented by, work your network, like Mark said. call your pool of resources within the sports task force. Do you have a number for so-and-so, or can you connect me? I mean, right now, the best thing we can do is sort of help each other out through all of this. Not everybody knows everybody. Sure, you know, some of us have better relationships here or there. So definitely leverage your network. And also get creative. If you're going after the star of the team and you're falling short, think about the veteran voices, right? DA, like sometimes the vet is likely to give you some time. So you might have to get creative with who you're taking on your show or for your story to kind of get there. So, you know, be very flexible in who you're going after, and you might start to have some more success with it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with what Tara said. I mean, there's just so many different ways to utilize people. In Tara's case, they have an incredible team over at Turner that handles PR and media relations with all of the on-air talent. So, you know, you can go in that way. We just did a great podcast with Chuck a couple of weeks ago, you know, and it's, you know, there's all kinds of different ways to do it. There's different avenues, whether it's the publicist, the manager, you know, they always have a whole team of people that are doing stuff with them. They're doing events that they need pub for, you know, that they want to get publicized. You can help them with that. There's nothing wrong with helping an athlete put his or her event out there. But at the back end, you say, hey, look, I'll be happy to put this out there, but I need to ask you about this, this, and the third. And most of the time, again, people are very accommodating. Like Tara and Mark said, we all have more time on our hands than we know what to do with now. So there's all kinds of different ways to do it. And don't just always think about the superstar. One of the best interviews I ever did at Turner was with David West after they won the championship at Golden State. And people don't think of him as a superstar, but it was one of the best interviews ever I did anywhere in 30 years. Because, you know, the guys that are older, that have been trying to win a title forever, they're as passionate, they're more passionate about it than the younger guys that maybe have won 2 or 3. So always think about those different avenues.
And he had more champagne than I think the rest of his teammates did.
Right.
Which helped the quotes.
That helps too. That always helps. We got a lot of questions here. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to mangle this name. I'm so sorry. Aliyu says, what do you think the future of sports media will be after this pandemic? Do you think more shows will be done remotely instead of in person?
Yeah.
Yes, probably. Probably. Yes, is the short answer. I suspect we'll have a lot more of these types of Zoom things going on because it's easy. There's not a lot of work that needs to be done. Somebody doesn't have to leave their house to go to a studio, or, I would suspect a lot of these will. Now, it may ebb and flow, but I think a lot of people that are now home are like, this is not bad. It's not that bad. And the connection is what matters. It doesn't matter if we look pretty or anything like that. We're all just trying to, get through this together. So that's what I think anyway too.
It's a new day in content creation. I mean, on the linear side, we've got these multi-million-dollar budgets, these huge sets, lighting, all of these things that matter and that have looked great. And now we've proven people are going to consume things even if they don't look that beautiful. Sort of the blessing and the curse of all this is that we're doing a really great job of doing this all from afar and on shoestring budgets. And so we're proving to leadership that, like, oh, you guys are pretty good at this, doing it this way.
Right.
There's also something to be said about, sports are not officially back on yet, right? I mean, there's some golf events that I'm sure we'll talk about that are going to get off the ground soon, but full functioning teams with fans and sports are not back on yet. There's not a plan, which means there's not a television plan yet for us to have announcers. So how we're already starting to walk through how we would even get announcers anymore to double headers on a weekly basis,
right,
and to sit in an arena with or without fans. And is that the best way to do it? Is it valuable? Is it necessary anymore? So that quickly, it's challenging the things that we've been doing for decades. So we don't know, but it will be different. And we're taking a long, hard look at what we need and why and how quickly, and what these productions on remote have looked like and what we've learned. The dirty secret is we have been doing things on remote for a long time. We have SAP announcers, the Spanish announcers, they do it from a room. They're never at the games. They do it from a room they call call games back to back. So it can be done, but now I think you'll see it on major broadcasts a lot more.
Man, I hope we get this vaccine so we could go back to normal.
Go to every game.
and because to your point, Tara, I think it's going to kind of be like the Olympics. And what I mean by that is, and not so much the U.S. because we've been able to afford people being there live, but the majority of the countries in the world don't have people there. They're like the Spanish announcers where they're sitting in a room and telling you what happened. And if the NBA does come back and we had zillions of scenarios, I hope that I would love to be there, but could we be talking to, LeBron on Zoom or talking to players over the phone after the game? It's probably really possible. But ultimately, I hope that a year from now, this is something that, is more of a memorial and less of a reality.
Yeah. It's certainly, it's taught us a lot of lessons, good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all have to kind of, this is why we always talk about, have another club in your bag. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to have more clubs in your bag. You can't just count on, I'm going to be on ESPN or I'm going to be on Turner, I'm going to be in the studio, and that's all I want to do. You have to be able to do a lot of different things. You have to be able to write. You have to be able to podcast. You have to be good on TV, all of those things, especially now because the jobs are shrinking. You can see what's going on in the print world. I mean, it's being devastated. They just had another round of cuts at the New York Post today in the sports section.
And with all of that happening, this is the time to start to figure it out if you haven't already, right? If you weren't already a Swiss Army knife, if you didn't already have all those tricks of like, oh, I liked a lot of different things, or I knew how to edit, or I knew how to do VOs, or I was, already playing in the podcast space. Now's the time to do it because it's a little bit of the Wild Wild West with content, right? I mean, you see Dwayne Wade going live every 5 minutes. I'm like, if I get an alert that Dwayne's live, or Shaq. Shaq's doing some really terrible videos and some really great ones, right? He's hitting goals to be 1 out of 100. Okay, who cares, right? It reminds me of the .com days when .com started. It was everything.com, mattress.com, and all these .coms, and then the bubble burst, and then the things that were valuable and had success, like they stayed. So I think it's the same way with content. So right now, if you are a writer, get into the podcast space, try it out. I mean, now's the time that it can be a little bit crude, doesn't have to be perfect. You probably are going to have access differently than you would have, 6 months ago. So play around in different spaces and get smart about it.
Yeah, and quickly, I have a show that I'm doing now, which was born during this pandemic with Undefeated called remember Funky Finger Productions? It had to do with Live in Color. That's what I feel like it's like, but it's called Round Ball Rap, and I do it with Kenya Martin, and we have a different player on every week, and it's 10 minutes. It's a 10-minute show, edited down, and now we're doing it after The Last Dance. And does it survive once we're through this? I don't know, but we're being creative now and trying it out, and people seem to like it.
Yeah, I mean, everything. There's no bad ideas now. There aren't any. There are ideas that may not work, but that doesn't mean it's a bad idea, right? So try anything right now, because everything is possible right now. As Tara said, the content piece is so desperate right now.
And I'll tell you, as content purveyors and providers and creators, there's going to be an appetite once we get through this about people who are documenting it. Right? Like I'm already upset that I didn't take pictures of myself from day one. Like, darn it, I think I look different. I wish I would have been like documenting my stages. But if you're doing that, whether it's your own story or sports or the landscape or the industry or whatever it is, there's probably going to be some value to it once we come up from the other side, because everybody's going to want to tell this story in different forms. So that could truly be your entree into what comes next if you're actually helping to document this as we go through it.
Right.
Hey guys, wanted to jump in real quick. There was a question from Ron Snyder I thought would really good and timely for you guys to address. With so much content out there, how do you make your social media, your on-air stuff, all that content pop out and stand out from what obviously is an overload of that type of content out there? Good
question. Video is always good, right? I mean, that always helps. Any video that you have of anything you're doing. It's different now. It's difficult now because you're not in front of the athletes. We understand that. It's different now. But any type of video that you can procure is going to help you. Look, I can only speak for myself. I'm not an expert on social media, but certainly I know that Instagram is huge right now. And so anything that you do live like this seems to resonate with a lot of people in a lot of different spaces now, maybe more so than ever. So don't be afraid to do something live and try to take some questions or ask for questions or try to secure whatever guests you can. It doesn't really matter, who they are. Everybody's interesting to me anyway. I mean, I think everybody's got an interesting story. So you can get great content out of anything, but I defer to the experts on this. I am not an expert on that.
Well, I'm not going on TikTok anytime soon, so I'll just let you know that. I won't be on there dancing. But I've been doing more Instagram things. Went on with Michael Eaves recently, went on live with him for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I'm trying to do is when you, God, I'm saying it wrong. So when you could post like a thing to try to get people to, God, help me out, on Instagram, but you put art around it and you could put music and here's my link. And I'm not doing it for David or Tara. I'm doing it for like the younger kids and trying to catch them. And I also last week interviewed a kid, Greg Brown III, and he announced his decision where he was going to go, whether it's G League or the college. He ended up going to Texas. And he like brought me in live on the Undefeated account, on his account, and I interviewed him. And Chris Haynes recently did that with Jalen, a big time star, high school star. So it's like David said, it's about being creative. And I'm like watching what the younger generation is doing because their Instagram is cooler than mine, so I've stolen some of their little tricks and used some of the music I know they like in order to try to hook people in to see what I'm doing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as you were saying, Mark, you gotta leverage your network. So double up, power up with someone else. So that way you're pulling, both sides of the fence. So power up with somebody else who's a writer or a TV person. So they're pulling their network in too. Mm-hmm. Don't be shy with promoting yourself out to a network. Join the Sports Task Force and utilize us as a network. We're constantly trying to, share resources and information and what each other are doing to inform others. So it is hard. It's a cluttered marketplace right now. Mm-hmm. But if you put some time and some creativity into it, pay attention to what other people are doing, but also have a point of view, that can help you stand out quite a bit.
Our man Chris Murray from Philly on the chat points out, it's a good point. If you're on the radio, your local area is a great resource for good stories in sports, which is very true. You can do the social distance 6-foot interviews and get some good stuff. Don't think that the pros are the only place you can find content. You can find content wherever you are, whatever city you're in. I guarantee you there's somebody that is either playing sports still or they did play sports at one point. You don't realize until years later that a guy who played in the Negro Leagues lived down the street from you. You know what I mean? Like you don't know until you ask. And so these are opportunities that you may have to get real good content that doesn't require you to know anybody or know any insiders or anything like that. So be creative, y'all. I mean, try different things. Like I said, they're not all going to work, but the whole point is that you keep trying until you hit something.
And offer yourself as a resource, instead of always asking for something, offer yourself to students, offer yourself to organizations who are interested in your information, your knowledge. I think a lot of companies are just doing Zooms with guest speakers. Offer yourself up just to expand sort of your connections in your circle.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question that this is not from the group, but this is one that we came up with, especially wanted to go with Tara. How has this gone over with veterans in the business who are used to doing things a certain way? Speaking of not being afraid to change and adapt.
It's been interesting. I mean, as you can imagine, we've got, a wealth of veterans behind the scenes and in front of the camera. So even behind the scenes, I think for our leadership team, our executives, our producers, everybody's had varying levels of, hey, now it's the Wild Wild West, so let's create everything and just have some fun with it. And we've been, especially on some of our platforms like Bleacher Report, really exploding with taking this opportunity to create stuff and have more access. And then there are some who are a little bit slower and more hesitant, saying, let's wait it out. Let's not just make content for the sake of making content. Let's, keep a strategy. Probably, the biggest dinosaur that we have is Charles, because he hates social media, says Twitter's for idiots. And if you guys heard him on the steam room a couple weeks ago, he said, I'm thinking about joining the internet. I might go on social media. So shockingly, because literally for years, and anybody, who's on the Turner team that's watching has known that we've talked to him for years about not even trying to convince him, but just talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. And he's always said, stop it, you millennials. The Chuck's not getting online. So he's slowly coming around. But the beauty of it is, and you guys might have caught him on SNL this weekend. Right. He has been on every platform. He's been on Zoom. We've gotten him on, there's a Cisco link, there's Microsoft. He has that, because every show has been different. And he's been great. And he actually has enjoyed it more than he thought he would. He launched a podcast earlier. He launched the steam room earlier this season, and he loves it. So he's tiptoeing his way through it. So for some of these guys, I think that they're so bored and they're seeing what everybody else is doing that they're going, all right, maybe this is interesting. This is how I tip my toe in. And then guys like Dwayne Wade and Shaq, who love social anyway, they're just exploding and enhancing the craziness that they were already doing.
Yeah. David Squires, who many of you all know, and if you don't, you should. He's one of the legends on the chat. Says one thing you can do is play sports trivia games with fans via Zoom and other virtual platforms, which is a great idea. That's a terrific idea. Anything that engages fans want to be engaged now more than ever. And so you have to, even if you weren't before, you have to cater now to what fans are asking for and clamoring for. Because they're the oxygen. We don't exist without them, so nobody wants a future where there's no fans in the stands, and, nobody wants that. We all understand how important fan participation is at all levels, whether they're at the arena or stadium or watching online or doing NBA Twitter. We all understand that we need them. And whatever you can do, even if it comes down to literally asking on your social platform, on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your Instagram, what do you guys want me to do? What are you guys interested in me doing? And taking whatever good suggestions you come up with, or they come up with, and running with them and trying them, and then engaging them in the comments. I know some of them are lunkheads, but most of them aren't. Most of them are just people that like sports like us. So, you know the ones that you can engage with and the ones that are not engageable. I'll put it that
also,
way.
Pay attention to what's in front of you. I might be kicking myself a little bit the other day because, Aaron Gordon decided to be a rapper all of a sudden. Right. I've known him since he was 17, and I probably should have called him to interview him and do a story with him. And I was like, I ain't gonna talk about it. And I was wrong. So don't be afraid to be told no. Shoot your shot, as they say, right?
What you thought about the track?
I mean, that's San Jose people aren't the greatest rappers in the world. So
I wasn't mad at it.
It was all right. It was all right. I mean, there's a lot of people rapping right now that need to go back to work. People I love. Yeah. No, it was interesting. His crib was hot.
Yeah.
Something else to do, why not?
Right. Oh, okay. Roderick wants to know, what is your best advice to a journalist coming out of college during this pandemic who is looking for a job and an internship, knowing that a lot of places have stopped hiring? Roderick, I'm not going to lie to you, boss. It's not the best time to be looking. It's not. I'm not going to paint a rosy picture. It's difficult. But I think, again, to Tara's point, this is a great opportunity to put something out there that might pique someone's interest. I know Tara's always looking for the next thing. You know, she's always interested in what's out there. And there's so many people who work in the business that are always out there looking for the next thing. We're always looking for the young people that come up with a great idea, that come up with a great story, come up with a great delivery, you know, whatever it is. So the internet is what, I mean, this is the time. If you were ever going to use the internet to market yourself, this is the time, you know, and it may not get you a job next week, but it may get you a job next month. You know what I mean? So you got to throw everything out there that you can, start a YouTube channel. If you haven't already, put your stuff out there so we can see it, you know, so we can read it. Start a blog, you know, whatever it is that you can get done as cheaply as you can. Use the internet, use it, you know, because people are watching. And if you do something that goes viral, or you do something that hits a note with people, you know, it can lead to something. It's not a guarantee, but I guarantee you won't get it if you don't try.
Well, then keep looking online, journalismjobs.com, or if you're a member of NABJ or the Sports Task Force, occasionally there's, you know, on a regular basis, maybe not so much now, there's jobs available.
Right.
But I think as a young journalist too, you can't be afraid to go outside the box. Like my first job was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which I didn't want to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but that was my first opportunity. So if your first opportunity, and Dave hates when I say Ames, Iowa, but like if Ames, Iowa,
no, I don't.
You always say, why you always say Ames? Yeah, but if it's Ames, if it's North Dakota, like if it's something that, just take it. Like I had a colleague, a young journalist who told me recently they turned down a job because, you know, they didn't like the city. And I'm like, who are you?
Right.
Like you just started. Like,
right.
Who are you to say you should get this and who you should get that? Like, get in the door, figure it out later. And a lot of young journalists don't realize, like, that first job ain't forever.
Right. It's why it's the first job.
I made $19,000 before taxes in my first job.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times I drove by McDonald's wondering if I should work there on the side. But
and
that job.
You think you are, you will move through it. You will, opportunity will come. Like it will just be a stepping stone if you're that great. So you shouldn't have a problem with humbling yourself and starting wherever it is.
Yeah.
Like a lot, like I remember Kareem Copeland, he started in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Like he didn't want to go to Mississippi,
right.
But he wasn't even, I don't even think he was there 2 years. But the fact that he went there and covered high school and covered colleges, I think led to, I think maybe he covered the Packers the next
Yeah, he
job.
went to Green Bay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and then now he's at the Post, you know, so
Even
I mean.
Before quarantine, I was constantly telling people, especially, you know, young journalists, like, you need to practice, right? So if you're not on ESPN yet, if you're not on TNT yet, you should be, you know, at home practicing a sideline report, do it with notes, throw away your notes, act like there's a major injury. How would you cover that? You know, unpredictability, watching yourself. So now more than ever, do that and post the good ones, not the bad ones.
Right.
Right. Share them, you know, send them around. There's no reason why you can't. Now everybody has a platform now, so create some content for yourself. How many times have you heard success stories of, you know, journalists coming out of markets because they did something super creative on the local telecast, or they wrote a really great story that they then got interviewed for on a national sports telecast. So there's no excuse now not to be, you know, honing your craft and posting it yourself and sharing it.
Hey guys, just wanted to add one quick point to what you're talking about. And when I listened to Mark, David, Tara, got it right, Tara. When I listen to you guys, the one thing I want the folks, you know, listening to take away from this is that how, you know, one of the things that has helped all of us get to where we're at is the ability to recognize, expand, and invest in the networks that we establish. A lot of the, like when you hear the people that Mark is mentioning, those are people that Mark in some ways has helped shape, and vice versa. When you listen to Tara and you listen to David, all of us. So when you meet someone in the business, don't just assume that because they're not where you want to be, or they're not at the place that you want to get to, that they can't help you. Recognize the importance of establishing your network, invest in that network, expand that network, and engage that network going forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Sports is small. I'll give a shout out because I saw in the questions to Larry Lundy. Everybody knows Larry Lundy. Larry Lundy has known me since I was basically just a young, runny-nosed, PR professional who wanted to work in sports and do major things. And he met me at a conference and he was so kind. And now, I'm this older lady who's now grumpy and, crotchety, but
yeah, that happens.
People are going to be. You never know, you lend a hand. So sports is a small world.
Yeah, you never know. And I'll say this as well, in the times that we are living in, it was so funny. I live in DC, so I'm following everything that's going on in the district. And they just posted on the district government website 150 jobs that they need people to do now because of this pandemic. Now, I don't know what they are. I don't know. I'm sure it has something to do with COVID. But look, a job's a job right now. You know what I mean? So don't hold out like I've got to get a job in the business or I've got to get a job on air in the top 50 market. No, you don't. You need to pay your bills is what you need to do. So whatever is available out there, as long as it's something that is safe and doesn't put you in harm's way, then you need to think about it. You need to think about jumping on those gigs that are available. So city governments, state governments, they are desperate for people right now to do various things in the various states. So, look everywhere. There's no bad job right now anywhere in any part of the business. Let's see.
Well, there are some bad jobs.
Well, there are, but you should still do them.
Not everything.
We've all had that.
Yes, I was a janitor. We've all
that.
had them.
I was a busboy once.
Yep.
When I was still working at a PR agency and I wanted to work full time in sports, a friend of a friend worked for the Texans. I didn't even really know this guy, and he said, and this is when the Super Bowl was in Houston months ago, but he said, if you can get to Houston, you can intern for me during the Super Bowl. And I was like, holy crap. So I was like, I'm there. I flew Southwest, connected 8 times, stayed with relatives. And all I did was run copies of stats to the media in the upper, literally the top of the dome. That's it. And so that's the media they don't even care about. That's the media who's not even getting, they can't even see anything.
Right.
And that's all I did was run copies. Anybody wants that? Half of them didn't care, didn't want it. And it was some international media, they didn't speak English. Right. I was the happiest person in that entire building. And I got to put on my resume that I worked a Super Bowl. I didn't have to be running PR strategy and running things. I put on the top of my resume that I was the Super Bowl. And that's what got me in the door and people starting to, ask me questions about my experience. So there are no bad jobs.
Well, and even if you have a job that's not journalism, to kind of Tara's point, and you're trying to get in, you could work for some people for free. Like my first internship was at San Jose Metro, which was a weekly newspaper. When I was in college, I sent them a letter, which people did back. I sent a letter and I said that I wanted to write sports stories for them. And it was basically a city, they had different city editions, neighborhood editions, and they hired me for free. But I got so many clips during that summer. And like Tara said, it's something you could put on a resume that even though I didn't get paid, it ended up helping me get that next opportunity.
You call it freelance work. I'm like, on resumes, you never talk about how much you got paid for a job. Call it freelance. Call it consulting. That's it.
Right.
You were in the building,
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Speaking of freelance, Kayla Jackson wants to know, for freelance sports reporters and or those who cover college sports, is there a different approach to finding story ideas because those players don't necessarily have publicists? Good question. Again, this is where there's an advantage to being young, I would say, because chances are, if you're a young person, you're just starting out and you're covering a college or you're covering, a community college or whatever it is that you're doing, or a semi-pro team, y'all probably got mutual friends. You probably do. You may not know it, but you might have mutual friends. I mean, there's just so many different ways to go about it. Y'all, and even if it comes down to, and this is not ideal, but I got a lot of great ideas talking to people in the spot, in the clubs. I'm not gonna lie, so, it's
you ain't going to club now.
Right, you can't go in the club now, but I'm just saying there's different ways, there's different approaches to doing it as opposed to just going through the school every time. Because the schools, it's not that they don't want to help you, it's just that
they don't want to help you.
They got a million other things, like, is this school going to open again? So they got a million other things on their plate right now. So
and protecting their athletes, so they get a little nervous.
Right. And they're protecting their athletes for sure. But again, there's different ways to kind of go about doing that.
Freelance is hard right now, David.
It's difficult. It's not easy.
Like,
I'm not saying it's
budgets
easy.
are being slashed, and
no question.
like I have people that have been hitting me up like, hey, how can I get a story on Undefeated? And it's got to be pretty great, I think, for something to pay for something right now. Like,
right.
That's why we're doing a lot of things on a shoestring, and I want to speak for our place, but I mean, everybody's getting cut. So I think one of the first things that have been cut is freelance budgets, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. It's a difficult time, but you have to kind of keep trying to do different things and be creative as you can. Your neighborhood, your church, your relatives, your friends. I mean, everybody knows somebody, right? So it may not be the big man on campus, the star quarterback, but hey, my cousin knows the third string tackle. Yeah, I'll get you his number. You never know. You never know. You got to push every button you can right now.
Well, and I'll tell you what, from a story idea standpoint, like broaden your horizons. Marcus Thompson had a great story where he interviewed a 49ers cheerleader who also is a nurse.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, that was a great idea. Thinking outside the box. There's people, like I did a thing about what NBA DJs, in-house DJs are doing now, or what NBA chaplains are doing now.
Right.
So it doesn't always have to be the athlete, doesn't even have to be the coach, but if there's somebody from an organization that is doing something really interesting, then like David said, everything's game right now. If a good story is a good story. So if it's, I saw something about the Hawks trainer, like, was supposed to be in the Boston Marathon. So instead he ran in Atlanta neighborhoods, ran the 26 miles and everything. Like that was a good story.
Yeah.
You can also draft off of, major themes. The Last Dance on ESPN right now is captivating. It's got everybody's attention, but look at every network, every show that's just drafting off that high. Everybody's looking for their own MJ angle, Bulls angle, Zeke, Rodman. So draft off of something big that's going on and get your angle that either pertains to your market or your demographic or your community. Find a big story to sort of ride the wave on.
This is a great time to go back and do pieces on great historical events that happened in your town, in your state, in your city. Whatever sports events happen. A couple of weeks ago, I spent all afternoon looking through the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper, reading Sam Lacey columns from the 1960s.
Wow.
Because Sam Lacey was a legendary, great sports columnist who wrote about sports literally for 75 years.
That's a great book too.
And is really, he's just a hero of mine. Championed Jackie Robinson to get into Major League Baseball when very few other people were, and certainly nobody in the white press was. And he and Wendell Smith from the Pittsburgh paper were a few people that were really pushing for it. So, but just because I wanted to read his writing, but in the course of reading all those stories, I was like, I didn't know that happened in Baltimore. I did, and so that is, you never know. So there's always that historical thing that you can go back to and maybe find somebody that either played in the game or was at the game and saw the game, so be creative, think about your city and all of the things that have happened there. And there's always some sports angle you can jump into.
And David, just to say real quick, you had we talked about it earlier, a great story where there was a kid from your university, American U, who played in, Japan?
Japan, yeah.
And had come back and you connected with him to talk about this league that failed after like two games in the return after the pandemic, or during the pandemic. And that was connection that you had. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for this, you wouldn't have been interviewing that guy.
No,
Probably.
no.
But because of that connection that you had in your school, and I thought that was very creative for you to find that story idea.
Right, right. I mean, it's something as simple as, how do they stay in shape? How do people in the area stay in shape? I mean, all these kinds of things. All these gyms are closed, right? So there are people who are personal trainers that don't have any clients right now. How are they making ends meet? I mean, there's all kinds of, different things that you can think about other than, the big people on campus. There's different ideas that you can come up with in your city. Let's see. Oh, Mikkel, my girl Mikkel. She does a great weekly show, Rolling with Ramos. It's on YouTube, and it's a great sports talk show. She says, I've been utilizing Instagram Live, as everyone else has been, specifically joining forces with a friend to do a recap series on The Last Dance every Monday. I'm used to doing a show on optimizing more time to get in-depth sports conversation. And she reminds that each IG Live can only be an hour, and you must be mindful of the time, and you can't get too deep into conversation. So she asked, what advice can you give as far as using Instagram effectively and optimizing it with what it offers to have in-depth conversations that are thorough? I think you're doing it. I mean, that's a great idea. To Tara's point earlier, we're all on The Last Dance. We're all looking for Last Dance angles for everything. So that is a great idea, and you don't have to have been there. You can just say, hey, here's what I think. Here's what this sounds like to me. And if you think MJ's being petty, say it. I mean, that's okay. That's okay.
Send your content to content providers. So if you're recording on your IG Live, or if you're going to go to live, there's other groups, the Sports Task Force, there's other groups, there's women in sports groups, there's Playmakers, there's all these other groups that you can say, hey, this content might be interesting to your membership, to your demographic, so that they'll start tagging you, hashtagging you, following you, promoting you.
Yeah, or another thing, and Tara probably has better advice on this, is promoting it before it starts. Like Michael Eaves, he's doing a really cool IG Live, I think daily right now. But what he does, he in advance has a graphic up of who his next guest is going to be. So beforehand, instead of just, I mean, because I don't know, if you're not on your Instagram, you're not just going to know off the top of your head. You need some kind of like pre-warning that somebody's going to do this programming, or you're going to miss a lot of great content, or have people miss what you're doing.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a surprise. People should know in advance that you're about to have a IG Live.
Right. So just put it out there on all your social platforms. And to Tara's point, send it to everybody. Everybody. Doesn't matter whether it makes sense to send it to them or not, because you never know who's watching. Our pal Chloe Harrison. Yeah, or repost it. Our pal Chloe Harrison. If there is a sense of normality when we return, do you suspect tighter security measures, less credentials being given out, more behind the scenes employees supporting productions from home will be implemented to protect the health and safety of players and team employees? Again, probably, yeah. I mean, probably is my answer. It may be that certain teams and certain leagues may limit credentials to, people that cover those teams on a regular basis. I mean, nobody's said that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's, at least at the beginning when we start again, that they do that to kind of keep the numbers down, to try and have some social distancing, because you have to have it everywhere. It's not just the fans who won't be there. All the media sit together too, at sporting events. We all sit in a press box, or we all sit on a row of seats that are for the press. Well, we can't do that now. We're going to have 6 feet between all of us now. So there's going to be fewer credentials, just period, I think.
And then that first game, or the last game I went to, was a Clippers-Warriors game, and that was the first one where they implemented the players being far away, being 6 feet away, or the coaches being 6 feet away. Now, the media, we were sitting all next to each other,
right?
Which probably was a mistake that we didn't understand at the time. But it did create an awkward situation. But, I mean, I'd be ecstatic if we were able to just be 6 feet away from a player, but I wouldn't be surprised if the games do come back, if this is the way we're talking to guys.
I think we can't be afraid to crawl before we walk.
Yeah.
We're talking to all of the leagues just about being smart. There's a reason why they just haven't opened the floodgates and say, okay, everybody back in the pool. They're trying to pay attention to science. They're trying to listen to medical professionals. They're trying to listen to the government. They're trying to, look back at history. They're trying to look at other countries about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that there's going to be a day where everybody just goes, hey, let's just, rewind back 45 days and operate like we were. It's going to be a slow roll. So there might be fewer credentials. There certainly will be different guidelines, but that doesn't mean it'll be forever. It'll just be until we get smarter or until there's a vaccine, until we learn more about it. But hopefully that doesn't make any of us nervous. We go, okay, what are the new parameters we have to work within, and how do we make that work? We're so used to having such fluidity, and like Mark said, going to every game and having full access and walking around and doing all of those things. We're just going to have to learn how to operate a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I think you'll see, if you're familiar with how the Olympics are handled in terms of media, where they have what's called a mixed zone, which is where they bring all the reporters to one place and they just walk the players past them, and they may talk to you and they may not. So it depends on how they feel after that day. And it's going to probably be something like that, I would imagine, or at the very least, I think locker rooms and clubhouses are probably going to be closed for a while, is my guess. Even once we start up again.
David, I'll be happy to have this problem.
Yeah, I get it.
Because that means we're back at games.
Yeah. No,
this one we'll take it.
Right.
But Tara's right. I do expect a crawl situation at first.
Yeah. Jonas Pope IV says, I find a lot of story ideas for college kids by following them on social media. Trust me, it works. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and if it comes down to, pinging them on social media and saying, follow me back, hey, we all have done it. So, don't be afraid to ask. And all of them won't, but some of them will, so then you have enough.
This seems simple, but build relationships now while they're in college,
Exactly.
Guys and girls who, whether or not you think they're going to make it, but just seem like they're stand up towards that relationship. Because, to the point earlier, you never know where they're going to end up.
Right.
And I think they remember you more if you were, on them before they were hot.
Yeah.
I got to know Paul George when he was in college, and that still pays, dividends now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Let's see. Eduardo Masonet. How have your asks to and from your editors changed? What are the things you all need help with these days from your editors?
What up, Ed?
I would say, I think, again, everybody is trying to help everybody out. So this is a great time to go to your immediate editor and the big editor, whoever they may be, and ask them, for help, in terms of story ideas, in terms of content. But you can't be afraid of going to them with an idea and saying, hey, I was thinking about this. What would you think if we did this? And the answer might be no, but that doesn't mean you should stop asking. They want to see, I promise you, editors now are looking for people who come up with creative things to do during this, because it's easy for you to throw up your hands and say, well, I can't get them. They're not available. The team's not going to help me. But there's people who are still getting people. You know what I mean? They're still getting stories. And some of that is because they know them, they've had relationships with them, but some of them is just reaching out, and just trying something different, and not being afraid to hear no. You're going to hear a lot of no's right now. But that one yes could change your career. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Let's see if there's something. Well, we talked about that. Mark, this is a question. You're the full-time writer of the group. Well, I write.
You're an editor too now.
Well, I am.
You have other responsibilities.
What tips would you offer as far as how to mine good stories? And you did a great piece with the young lady who was in the WNBA draft. It was just phenomenal. And it was a piece. It was a video and a digital piece. And it was terrific.
Yeah, Satu Sabali.
Yes.
The next big star. I think right now it's about being creative, thinking outside the box, paying attention to what's going on, it doesn't even have to be a game about the game. It's about what the people are doing. And then even if there's some coronavirus fatigue, maybe even within that, find a backstory or a different angle that makes that story unique. Like sometimes I really just sit around and I'll think about, okay, let's go through Atlanta Hawks, Boston Celtics, even go alphabetical,
Right.
and
Sure.
think about the players and the teams and what they're doing, and looking at what they're doing on social media, and looking at every email, and calling people. Like another thing that's smart to do, call Tara August or Torreya from Turner, or call agency like BDA Sports or Goodwin Sports or Clutch or whatever, and talk to their PR people, because they have players that maybe it's not LeBron, but maybe it's another player in their agency that's doing something pretty cool. Like exhaust every possible PR person that you could think of to just say, hey, you know of anything cool?
Right.
Remember when Dame Lillard's music passion was just a passion, right?
Right,
Like,
right,
people
right.
kind of quietly knew, and then he started doing a little bit, like, now he's, full blown. But like back then, when you talked to Goodwin or you talked to Mary Ford, she'd be like, oh, well, maybe I'll talk about the game, but like if you want to talk about he's really passionate, he takes it really seriously. I mean, you get those nuggets from people who are connected to the athlete that'll get you something a little bit off the beaten path, or get somebody talking when they don't want to talk about what just happened on the floor.
And real quickly, like Instagram, as someone pointed out, social media earlier, I ended up doing something with Bismack Biyombo on the Round Ball Rap Show, because he's doing like exercise videos, fitness videos on Instagram with Afro beats, which I thought was cool, and then DJ Augustin with the Magic, a lot of my family members who live in New Orleans and have been affected. And he found a thing in New Orleans where he's donating money to a group that's buying food from restaurants that are struggling, who are getting out of work musicians to deliver the food. So it's like a cycle that's helping people, and they're giving the food to frontline reporters, workers in hospitals. And that was just some like throwaway email that I decided to read. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So read all your emails, check out all the social media posts. Just read Reuters. Read. I don't just do CNN, man. I read Reuters. I read Al Jazeera.
And don't just read the sports page, because people are doing things outside of the games. Obviously, they're doing all these kinds of, like Mark said, all these different projects that are on the Metro page, they're on the business page.
Or maybe something that's happened in a city that a player's from might conjure up a story like, well, what do you think about what's going on in Flint? Or, you know what I mean? Or New Orleans with the
New York,
DJ was from New Orleans, and New Orleans been hit hard, and he was good talking about that. So find a New York athlete to talk about Brooklyn.
Listen to the people around you too. My mom had been talking a lot, tells me a lot about her friends and all of the details, and sometimes I'm fully dialed in, sometimes I'm not. But one time she was talking about her friends who are blind, who are avid Kings fans, and go to Kings games. They're season ticket holders, and they go to every home game. And I was like, what did you say? What is it? And we ended up doing this great feature about her friends who are blind and have been long-term die-hard fans, and what the experience is like, and why they want to go and be in the arena and have that experience, as opposed to staying home listening to it on radio. So a great idea can come from anywhere. If you're just sort of paying attention and just listening and giving it some ingredients.
Like what is Clipper Darrell going through now? Like maybe find even a super fan. And I saw Clipper Darrell was making masks, or he had a mask that was half and half. Maybe I'm giving somebody a story right now.
Like I said,
everything game right now.
Everything's interesting right now.
I'd read that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm mad I didn't know that King story, Tara.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So let's see. It's 8 o'clock. Can we keep going or should we stop now? I don't know.
I'm
What are the
good.
rules? I'm
What
good to
else we
keep
got
going.
going on?
Exactly. We said we can extend this to 8:15. Done. Let's
Okay.
keep going.
All right.
Let's see.
Keep rolling, guys.
We have so many questions. Let me go through this real quick.
There's a huge storm coming through Atlanta, so hopefully my Wi-Fi will
I hope your Wi-Fi doesn't go.
stay up.
What was that? People leaving their houses? Is that
Pretty much. There's all the people outside bowling and getting tattoos.
All right.
Waffle House is open now.
Jared Oliver wants to know, do you realistically expect there to be an NFL, NCAA football season to start in 2020?
I know who the champs are right now.
I think there will be a season. This is my guess.
Go Tigers.
There'll be a season. It'll be truncated. It won't start on time. But
Will there be fans, Tara?
My guess is for football, they're going to figure it out faster than other sports. It'll be limited, extremely limited. But I think at some point, I don't know if they'll start with fans. But football is just, got every incentive to try to figure it out. I think they will. I think basketball's going to start for sure without fans.
Yeah.
I went to and it's not an LSU plug by any means, but I went to the national championship game. And to think that just in January I was somewhere with 100,000 people was just like really scary to me right now. Like I can't see it.
We were all in Chicago for All-Star in February. It's, everybody
at the arena,
at the arena, doing all the things that you do at an All-Star weekend and dealing, and having hundreds of interactions with hundreds of people, it just boggles the mind. Let's see. Kendra Andrews from The Athletic.
Hey,
my girl Kendra says,
superstar.
For writers, particularly those of us who have to hit certain numbers a week, what is your advice for coming up with creative and fresh ideas on a consistent basis? You know what? I just looked at, I've written 11 stories this month, and I don't know if all of them were any good, but I'm just trying everything, Kendra. I'm trying everything I can think of, would that be an idea? I'm not sure. Well, maybe I'll try it, and you try it and you do the best you can with it. From where you are, I know you're in Denver, I'm just curious I'd be curious about something, just thinking off the top of my head. I guarantee you there's somebody that's still running at altitude, still goes out every day and runs at altitude. And I just wonder what that's like running out there basically by yourself now. There's some people who are running, but it would be an interesting thing for someone who's done that all their lives. Like, what is it like? What is the solitude like? Is it empowering in some ways? It might be good. They may prefer it, or do they miss the other people that they would see? So things like that. Again, it doesn't mean it's a good idea. It's just something to try. You know what I mean? You're just trying everything right now.
I saw a news yesterday that was talking about a collection of stories, but it was called Innovation in Isolation. Mm-hmm. And it was just spotlighting all of these. And I thought, that's great. That's power. That's something that, we can all kind of relate to, but that's interesting how people have been innovating differently. Right. Even Club Quarantine, right? D-Nice, that's what he does for a living, but he was the first person and he did that's innovation in isolation. So maybe there's something there about how everybody, is creating their sort of own art, their own sport, their own livelihood amidst isolation.
Yeah.
And go ahead. In Mo Better Blues, Shadow told Bleak, I don't know about you, I'm gonna play the music that people like. Simple as that. And I think for somebody trying to get numbers up, you got to play the music that your people like.
Yeah.
If Joker sneezes, because Kendra covers the Nuggets, does a great job. Just 3-paragraph story. You'd be surprised if it's just something out of the beaten path that he did on social media. Mm-hmm. But he's their popular star. Write about it. Yeah. Do a 4 or 5 paragraph story. Post a video, and I remember one story I wrote. I broke the story that the New Orleans had changed their name to the Pelicans. Mm-hmm. And it was 3 paragraphs long, and over 1 million people read it. It doesn't have to be a long story. If some player, especially a popular player, does something that's funny, unique, even if it's 3 or 4 paragraphs, people want to read about the stars so bad. Mm-hmm. if I'm a Lakers beat writer, anything LeBron does, I'm writing it.
Yeah.
Warriors, anything Curry, you know, the popular people, if you're a writer at large, write anything that anybody popular does, and that'll probably drive up your numbers.
Yeah. I would love to do a story on Steph doing masterclass now, for example. I would love to just talk to him about that, just what that's like, you know, what the process is like. But the other thing I would say, Kendra, is this is a great time to go to other people that are covering Denver teams and say, hey, let's work on this thing together. You know, they might have an idea, but they don't have a number. You may have a number, but may not have the idea, you know. So it's a great time to reach out and cross sports, you know, the Rockies beat writer or the University of Colorado beat writer or, you know, the Broncos beat writer. They may have an idea about something.
Or DA, maybe even like, I hate to say it because this is clickbait, but that's what you're asking. Like controversial times in that franchise's history. I covered the Nuggets when they boycotted practice once.
Right.
Like you could go back or, you know, do a story on some crazy stuff that happened, get some old heads to talk about it. And then maybe the city relives that and it becomes a conversation and your story gets pushed around on Facebook, social media, you know, because it takes them back to a time that was really interesting.
And this is, you know, I can't remember if it was the finals last year or the year before. Somebody had this incredible overtime in a finals game where they scored like 15 points. And it just triggered something that I remembered. It was like, wait a minute, who was that guy in the triple overtime game when the Celtics played the Suns in 1975? Oh, Glenn McDonald. That's right. That's who it was. And I I couldn't find him. And I looked on Twitter. He's on Twitter. And I said, could you follow me back? And he followed me back. And I said, I want to write a story about you because this guy did this and I want to know what you thought about it. And he wasn't at the game. I wasn't at the game. You know what I mean? So you just, everything, you know, anything that goes on. I always am looking for anniversaries. It's been 20 years since this happened. It's been 30 years since this happened. You know, whatever. Yeah. And just go back, like Mark said, somebody was at that game. Somebody played in that game, you know. Let's see.
Or see what was written, you know, 5, 10, 20 years ago. Do a follow-up piece.
Right. Whatever happened to.
Yeah. What's the rest of the story?
Exactly.
Where are they now?
Right. Let's see. Jay Adande, our man, says, let the young folks know about Mark Asher's phone work skills. Mark Asher was a legendary reporter at the Washington Post who never was at a game, never went to a game, but broke stories all the time because he was on the phone all the time talking to people. He was talking to coaches. He was talking to ADs. He was talking to players, whether they were current players or retired players. And he knew everybody in town. And so they trusted him and he broke all kinds of stories. So that's when, again, like, don't be afraid. If you're a young reporter, call the SID up at whatever school. It doesn't have to be the school you cover. It could be the school across town. Y'all got anything interesting going on? You know, I mean, you never know. Call the high school coach, you know, that you covered when you were covering highs 5 years ago, you know.
Because, you know, and David, to your point, I mean, like a popular team may not call you back, but like I remember when Raymond Ritter from the Warriors used to beg us to write about them. You know, I got this Andrus Biedrins is going to be an all-star. Can you write about him? Exactly. Like, and now obviously they're popular, but that person also might remember that, hey, you were writing about us when we were down. You know.
And Raymond is one of the great, you know, PR professionals who I'd say, you know, 10 out of 10 he'll return a call, return an email, even if it's a no. But also sometimes he'll give you some nuggets, some leads of like, hey, I can't get you Steph, but let me tell you something else. And if you do him a solid, if you take his advice, write about something else, cover something else, he'll come back around and take care of you. So you know, it's worth building that kind of relationships to the really great PR team of, you know, professionals who are trying to help, even if they can't say yes every time. Right.
And that's a great point that Tara makes is you know, the first answer oftentimes is no. But then the second question can always be, well, what if we do this instead? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, you can always pivot to, all right, you can't give me this, but how about if you give me this? How about if we get, you know, the guy that doesn't play, the 12th man or the 15th man, you know, the guy or the two-way guy, you know, who's on the G League, team. You know, there's all kinds of different angles that you can go to. If you cover a football team, there's 53 guys on it. You know what I mean? Or if you cover a
Not
college
including
team,
the practice squad.
right? If you cover a college team, there's 80 guys on it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of opportunities. It doesn't have to be the star guy. It can be the fifth string tackle that plays the cello. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anything. You know, so, you know, always keep your mind open to new ideas and different things. Let's take these last few minutes to just, if there's anything y'all want to get out there to the young folks that are looking at this or taking part in this, as we kind of wrap this up in terms of, you know, what you would do, you know, what you would recommend to them in terms of not just story ideas, but just kind of like, you know, everybody kind of being aware of the time that you're in, cognizant of your own health and your own wellness and all those sorts of things. Are there things that we should be passing on to our guests tonight?
I would say be honest with taking care of yourself first, right? It's just like being on the airplane, put your own oxygen mask first before you help others. So think about really what's going on with you in this time. If you're, you know, with family, if you're working hard, if you're not working, whatever, you know, kind of walking through whatever you need to take care of yourself to keep yourself healthy. You know, we have to just be honest that this is a time that nobody's ever lived through before. So there's going to be some ups and downs and challenges. So just be rightful in acknowledging what you're going through and what you need to keep going. And alluded to earlier, being asked the question, like, you know, what's been the best day and the worst day during all of this? And mine was they were both within 24 hours, and it was the Teddy Riley baby phase versus. Right. I have never laughed, cried, been frustrated. I love part one. I love part two. Yeah. Is my favorite thing. People are so tired of me talking about it. My best day. But like, that was just, and I don't know, maybe I was just delirious, right? But out of some of these things that we're all going through, some levity comes through, and just allow yourself to enjoy it, and be fearless. This is the time to be creative and fearless in art, because nobody's going to knock you for it, and you might actually really strike gold.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely think, as we said before, just be creative, think outside the box. Got a lot of free time, so just perhaps get a lot of notifications on a lot of people you think are interesting on social media to see what they're doing, and shoot your shot. All they can say is no. What if they say yes?
Yeah.
Sometimes you might even get a story. Well, I'll let you talk to them, but you got to mention what they're doing with this charity. Yeah, okay.
Of course, yeah.
You know, just there might be 10 no's and one yes, and that one yes might be a great yes.
Yeah.
So just keep plugging, but don't do anything stupid right now, like to get a story. This is a scary time, and you know, so like what Tara was saying about the mask and this and that, like, don't risk yourself for a story right now. We don't want to be talking to you about you in past tense.
Exactly.
But probably my worst day, well, I'm saying this probably to a lot of people, my mom got corona. That was my worst day. My best day is her calling me and said that she now has a test saying that she doesn't have it anymore. So there was a scary time where several of our family members were affected. Several people close to them passed. And so, but now it's, you know, when I call my mom a lot, but every phone call is beautiful right now.
Yep.
I'm calling her daily.
Yep, absolutely. Look, turn the TV off. Turn it off. You know, or if you're going to turn it on, don't watch the news 24 hours a day. I mean, it's okay to keep abreast of it for a while, but you have to give yourself a mental break. And if you're with your family, you know, play Monopoly or something. You know what I mean? Like, just take your mind off of it.
A lot of good music.
But yeah, you know, exactly. Yeah. You know, put some music on, or you know, whatever it is that can give you some mental break time. You need to do that, because if you're grinding right now, you could grind yourself out, and you don't want to do that. You know, we're going to get through this, I think, you know, so but you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. So That means hydrating. That means get outside if you can and walk around your block, even if you can't, if you don't have a track, walk around the block a couple times, you know, breathe in some fresh air and get some sleep. You know, get as much sleep as you can.
All right.
Can I tell you one thing before we go? So my brother and his amazing wife are expecting their first baby.
Hey, tell myself what's up.
They're on, so say hello. They don't have
Sacramento.
Anybody has a good girl name that goes with the last name August, just at me, let me know, because they're taking all suggestions.
Oh, I got one. I'm gonna type it to you right now.
Okay,
send it to you right now. Sending it to you right now.
Nice.
And Sherrod, now you got more time to get a better sweater.
Oh, wow. Mr. Izod. Mr. Izod is talking? Circa 79? Wow. Hey, listen, folks out there, first of all, I just want to thank David, Tara, Mark. You guys were awesome. Lots of folks tuned into this. Lots of folks were helped by this. And like I said, this is what we do at the Sports Task Force. I mean, we make it a point of being there for anyone and everyone who wants to be helped. And we're not the least bit holding back on what pearls of wisdom that we have to offer, particularly at a time like this. So again, thank you for all the people who checked us out. And if you've got any more questions, you can certainly find us all on social media. And that will be it for this session. But we will be
Sherrod, don't you have some good news to give us too, don't you?
That will come in the next coming days.
Okay.
I'm gonna let him break that window.
All right.
Anyway,
thank you everybody for watching.
It didn't have to be about that. I just asked if you had some good news.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Thank you, DA. Thanks.
Thank you. It's so good to see everybody.
Thanks,
you all.
Everybody. Love y'all, man.
Ask questions. Yes, love to all.
Be safe, folks. Be safe out there.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care.